What would you do if your perfectly normal Thursday night date suddenly turned into a legal consultation with a printed contract before dessert even arrived? Because, my friends, imagine sitting there, halfway through your overpriced truffle pasta, when the woman across from you calmly pulls out a folder and says, "Before we continue seeing each other, I need you to review this emotional exclusivity agreement." Not a joke. Not a meme. A contract. My friends, this is Scarlet Veil. And today, I'm telling you a story that made me question whether modern dating is romance or a corporate onboarding process. Welcome to the channel Lying Whispers, where we unwrap the internet's wildest confessions and ask the question everyone's thinking, but is too polite to say out loud. Before we dive into this beautifully chaotic disaster, subscribe, hit that like button like it personally offended you, leave your hot take in the comments, and share this with your most dramatic single friend. And grab a coffee or whatever fuels your emotional stability, because you're going to need it.
Stay until the end.
The twist? Oh, it escalates. This story comes from an anonymous online confession. Classic AITA format. Title? AITA for refusing to sign a dating trial agreement on the first date? Oh, we're starting unhinged. I love it.
Let's talk about Ethan.
31 years old. Graphic designer. Self-described emotionally available, which respectfully could mean anything from healed king to walking red flag in neutral packaging. He meets Vanessa on a dating app. Vanessa is 28. Corporate attorney. Minimalist aesthetic. Thoughtful captions. Profile says she values radical transparency and intentional connection. Whenever someone says intentional, I blink twice. They message for about 2 weeks. The vibe? Effortless. Intelligent conversations. Flirty, but not cringe. No visible red flags. She seems composed. He feels hopeful. First date, trendy restaurant. Soft lighting. Wine neither of them truly understands but both pretend to. Everything flows. Until it doesn't. Midway through dinner, Vanessa reaches into her bag. Not for lip gloss. Not for her phone. For a slim leather folder. Ethan assumes it's a joke. Spoiler alert. It is not. She places a printed document on the table. Title: 30-Day Emotional Exclusivity Trial Agreement. I'm going to let that sit for a second. Because yes, it had bullet points. Vanessa explains calmly that in past relationships she experienced emotional ambiguity and wasted time with men who avoided commitment. So now she implements a structured evaluation phase to ensure alignment.
Structured
Evaluation
phase.
My friends, are we dating or applying for fellowship? The agreement outlined. For 30 days, Ethan would refrain from dating or flirting with anyone else. Disclose any contact with ex-partners. Participate in weekly compatibility check-ins. Maintain communication transparency standards. There was also a termination clause. Of course there was. Ethan laughs nervously. Vanessa does not. He asks if this is satire. She says she values efficiency in emotional investments. Efficiency. My friend's romance just clocked in at 9 m. Ethan tries to stay polite. He says he understands wanting clarity, but maybe they could just get to know each other organically? Vanessa's expression tightens. She says resistance to structure often indicates fear of accountability. And there it is.
The shift.
Now, Ethan isn't just a guy on a date. He's a psychological case study. She adds that if he signs tonight, she'll cover dinner.
Oh.
Now we're layering incentives. Manipulation with a side of chivalry. Ethan feels the pressure. He imagines himself explaining to future friends how he signed a contract on date 1. He gently declines. No yelling. No mockery. Just a calm no. Vanessa pays her half. Tells him he may not be ready for mature partnership. And leaves. Clean exit. End scene. Except not really. The next morning, Ethan receives a message from her. Long, thoughtful. Clinical. She suggests he might have avoidant tendencies. She links articles about attachment theory. My friends, when someone diagnoses you after risotto, that's not romance. That's intake paperwork. So Ethan posts the story online asking, AITA for refusing to sign? And the internet splits. Some say she's just protecting her peace. Others say she brought corporate HR into candlelight dinner. But here's where things get complicated. 3 weeks later, Ethan gets a message from someone else. A woman named Camila. She says she's part of a private community. Vanessa belongs to a structured dating strategy group.
Yes.
There's a group with templates and tiers. Camila insists the contract isn't about control. It's about preventing ghosting and emotional dishonesty. She sends him their framework overview. There are levels. Level 1 Initial Assessment. Level 2 Supervised Exclusivity. Level 3 Family Integration Readiness. Level 4 Long-Term Projection Mapping. My friends, this is not Bumble. This is a startup accelerator for boyfriends. Ethan starts questioning himself. Was he triggered by structure? Is spontaneity just an excuse for emotional laziness? And then Camila drops the twist. The contract
Was partly a test.
Vanessa didn't necessarily expect him to sign. She expected negotiation. She wanted to see if he'd engage, propose revisions, demonstrate leadership. Leadership. On date 1. Without knowing there was an exam. Tell me, how do you pass a test you didn't know you were taking? Ethan feels played, but also intrigued. So he reaches out to Vanessa again, this time for clarity. She explains that in her experience, men panic when women set firm standards. She wasn't looking for obedience, she was looking for collaboration. Now the story shifts. She wasn't just rigid. She was afraid. Afraid of wasting years. Afraid of betrayal. Afraid of vulnerability, without safeguards. And Ethan? He admits something too. His father was controlling. Anything that smells like imposed structure makes his nervous system light up like a Christmas tree. Suddenly, this isn't villain versus victim. It's trauma versus trauma. They agreed to try again. No contract. No folder. Just coffee. No legal language. Just honesty. For a month, things go surprisingly well. Vanessa softens. Ethan communicates more clearly. It almost works. Almost. Because the group still exists. And Vanessa continues, sharing generalized updates about her dating progress. Not explicit, but detailed enough. Ethan discovers this. Feels exposed. Like he's being peer-reviewed. They argue. Not explosively, but deeply. He says he doesn't want to be a case study. She says the group is her support system. And here's the heart of it. For Vanessa, love is something to optimize. For Ethan, love is something to experience. They're not wrong. They're different. They end it.
Peacefully.
No signatures required. But wait. We're not done. Because weeks later, the group's social page posts an anonymous story. A recent candidate displayed avoidant resistance to structured growth. No names, but enough details. Ethan feels publicly dissected, even without being identified. He messages Vanessa asking to be removed from future discussions. She says no personal information was shared. That growth requires pattern analysis. Pattern analysis. We are truly living in the era of spreadsheet romance. One member of the group, Sophia, privately apologizes to Ethan. She admits some members feel pressured to uphold rigid systems even when their intuition disagrees. The group begins to fracture internally. Some believe Vanessa compromised her standards. Others think the contract approach needs revision. Eventually, Sophia leaves. Vanessa becomes quieter in the community. The system shrinks. Not destroyed. Just humbled.
And Ethan?
He starts seeing someone new. Clara. No contracts. No performance tests. On their third date, she says, I don't need guarantees. Just honesty. He almost laughs from relief. And here's where we land. Was Vanessa wrong? Not entirely. She wanted safety. Was Ethan wrong? Not entirely. He wanted freedom. The real question isn't AITA. The real question is, when does protecting yourself turn into controlling the narrative? When does structure stop being boundary and start becoming armor? And if someone handed you a printed exclusivity agreement on the first date, would you sign? Would you negotiate? Or would you politely request the check and sprint? Tell me in the comments. My friends, I need to know what you would do in this situation. Like this video if you believe emotional transparency shouldn't require a signature. Share it with that friend who turns every relationship into a strategic plan. And remember, not every red flag is loud. Some arrive printed in 12-point font. Oh my sweet chaos gremlins. You thought that was the ending? My friends, we do not gather here at Lying Whispers for tidy emotional closures. We gather for the aftershock. Because just when Ethan thought he had exited the structured romance cinematic universe, the universe said, respectfully,
No.
About 2 months after things ended with Vanessa peacefully, maturely, almost suspiciously calm, Ethan receives a notification. Not from her. From the group's official account.
Yes.
The Optimization Collective. The love, but make it corporate society. The message? We would like to offer you a right of response. A right of response. My friends, what is this, a Senate hearing? Ethan ignores it. He blocks the account. He tells himself he's done.
Growth.
Closure. New beginnings. Except drama is allergic to closure. 3 days later, a mutual acquaintance, because of course the world is small and petty, sends Ethan a screenshot. The group had posted another anonymous breakdown. Title: When Potential Fails Due to Emotional Inflexibility. No names, but details. The leather folder. The coffee reconciliation. The discomfort about community sharing. It was him. Not explicitly, but obviously. And hair race where it shifts from absurd to personal. Ethan doesn't feel angry. He feels studied.
Cataloged.
Like he's a failed prototype in a beta test. He messages Vanessa one last time. Not to fight. Not to rekindle. To request boundaries. He says he doesn't consent to being discussed, even anonymously. Her reply is calm, measured, surgical. No identifying information was shared. Growth requires data. Data. My friends. Imagine being called data after kissing someone goodnight. That's when Ethan realizes something crucial. For Vanessa, vulnerability had to be processed collectively. For him, vulnerability required privacy. Neither is evil, but they were built on opposite emotional operating systems. And then plot twist number 7. One of the group members, Sophia, reaches out privately again. She tells Ethan something new. The group isn't as united as it looks. Some members are beginning to feel trapped by the structure they helped build. They joined to avoid heartbreak. But now they're afraid to date without the framework. They don't trust their instincts anymore. They trust the checklist. And that, my friends, is the most dangerous part. When the system becomes safer than your own intuition. Vanessa, meanwhile, faces quiet pushback. Some members believe she compromised by giving Ethan a second chance without signed terms. Others believe sharing ongoing details crossed ethical lines. The group fractures subtly. No dramatic explosion. Just slow disillusionment. Sophia eventually leaves. Publicly. She posts a message about reclaiming emotional fluidity. No attacks. Just evolution. Vanessa responds diplomatically. But her activity in the group decreases. The templates remain. The contracts still exist. But the certainty? Shaken. Now, let's zoom out. Because here is where Ethan's story takes a final, quiet turn. He continues dating Clara. No contracts. No advisory board. Just 2 flawed humans trying. One night, Clara casually asks him, "Have you ever been with someone who made you feel evaluated instead of loved?" He pauses. Smiles.
Says yes.
But instead of bitterness, there's clarity. He tells her the whole story. And Clara doesn't laugh. She doesn't mock. She says something simple. It sounds like she was scared. That's it. And that sentence reframes everything. Because Vanessa wasn't a villain. She was terrified of wasting years. Terrified of betrayal. Terrified of chaos. So she built a system. Ethan wasn't immature. He was allergic to control.
Conditioned by his past.
Protecting autonomy, like oxygen. 2 protective mechanisms collided. That's the truth. Now here is the part I want you to really sit with. The AITA question was never about the contract. It was about fear management. Vanessa managed fear through structure. Ethan managed fear through space. Neither strategy is wrong. But when protection replaces connection, intimacy suffocates. And here's the real kicker. Months later, the group quietly rebrands. No more contracts. Now, they call them alignment conversations. Soft language. Same concept, but gentler. Evolution. Vanessa eventually dates someone new. Rumor has it no paperwork involved. Growth is subtle like that. So tell me, my beautifully opinionated chaos committee, if someone handed you a printed exclusivity agreement on the first date, would you see ambition or control? If your partner discussed your relationship in a private advisory group, would you call it support or betrayal? At what point does protecting your heart turn into micromanaging destiny? Commenta AI, my friends, I need to know what you would do in this situation. Drop your verdict. Like this video if you believe love should feel human, not procedural. Share it with a friend who secretly runs emotional risk assessments before every date. And remember, some people build walls, some build systems. But in the end, we're all just trying not to get hurt. And sometimes the real red flag isn't the contract. It's the fear behind it. Oh, my friends, you're asking the right question. Because when you think the story is finally done, healed, processed, archived in the We Survived Modern Dating folder, life whispers. Round 3. And this one gets psychological. 6 months pass. Ethan is still seeing Clara. It's calm, stable, boring in the healthiest way. No frameworks, no advisory board, no PDF attachments. Just two people navigating each other imperfectly. And then, because the universe loves narrative symmetry, Ethan runs into Vanessa at a networking event. Of course he does. Soft lighting, polite jazz in the background, free champagne that tastes like regret. They lock eyes. That brief pause. Not hostile, not romantic, just charged. And here's what's interesting. Vanessa looks different. Not physically, energetically, less composed, more human. They exchange polite greetings, small talk, surface-level updates. And then she says something unexpected. I've been thinking about the contract. My friends, if someone brings up the contract months later, buckle up. She tells him she stopped using written agreements. That after everything, she realized she was trying to engineer certainty. And certainty does not exist in love. She says the group shifted direction. Less rigidity. More dialogue. No more formal documentation. Just expectation-setting conversations. Which, honestly, is what normal adults call dating. But here's the twist that made me sit upright. Vanessa admits something else. When she posted about him anonymously, she wasn't trying to analyze him. She was trying to defend her own ego. Because when he said no, it cracked something. Her system was supposed to protect her from rejection. But he rejected the system. And that felt personal. Now pause with me. Because that right there, that's growth. Uncomfortable growth. But growth. Ethan listens. Doesn't argue. Doesn't reopen the wound. Just nods. And then she asks him something soft. Did I scare you? Not accusatory. Curious. And he answers honestly.
Yes.
But not because you wanted commitment. Because it felt like I was being assessed, not known.
Silence.
But not the tense kind. The reflective kind. And here's where the story shifts into something deeper. Vanessa says she started therapy. Not because the contract failed, but because she realized she didn't trust her own judgment without a system. She needed structure to feel safe choosing someone. Because trusting instinct meant risking being wrong. And being wrong felt catastrophic. My friends, that is the real villain in so many modern relationships. Not control, not fear, but catastrophic thinking. If I choose wrong, I waste years. If I open up, I'll be blindsided. If I don't secure this now, I'll lose. So we draft emotional insurance policies. We call it standards. We call it boundaries. We call it discernment. But sometimes it's just fear in a blazer. Ethan tells her about Clara. He doesn't flex it.
He doesn't weaponize it.
He just shares. Vanessa smiles genuinely and says she's glad he found something that fits him. And hair-ace where it gets almost poetic.
She says,
I think I was trying to date the future instead of the person. Let that sink in. Dating the projection, not the present. They part ways kindly. No tension. No unresolved longing. Just mutual recognition of incompatibility. But wait. We are not finished. Because 2 weeks after that encounter, Ethan gets another message. Not from Vanessa. From Sophia. Yes. The reformist. She tells him something fascinating. The group officially dissolved. Not dramatically. Not in flames. Just faded out. Members drifted. Some married. Some dated normally. Some rebuilt softer versions of structure. And Vanessa? She left voluntarily. Said she wanted to try relationships without an audience. Without advisory panels. Without performance metrics. And here is the final twist. Months later, through mutual acquaintances, Ethan hears Vanessa is dating someone steadily. No contracts. No trial periods. Just conversation. Is it guaranteed to last? Who knows? But she's trying differently. Now let's zoom all the way out. Was Ethan the villain?
No.
Was Vanessa the antagonist? Also no. The real antagonist was fear dressed up as sophistication. And hair-ace the uncomfortable truth. So many of us do this in quieter ways. We don't bring printed contracts. But we run internal evaluations. We score texts. We monitor response times. We consult friends like advisory committees. We analyze instead of feel. So let me ask you, my beautifully self-aware chaos analysts, have you ever built emotional armor so advanced that no one could actually reach you? Have you ever rejected someone not because they were wrong, but because they disrupted your control? If someone challenged your system tomorrow, would you defend it or question it? Drop your verdict below. Was this AITA? Or was this two people outgrowing fear in real time? Like this if you believe love should be conscious but not corporate. Share it with a friend who says, I just have high standards, but secretly means I'm terrified. And remember, sometimes the contract isn't on paper. It's in your head. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is delete the draft. I'll see you in the next confession, my friends.